Direct News TV. October 13, 2023. Israel-Hamas live, dozens killed while fleeing to southern Gaza. Hamas officials say at least 70 people, mostly women and children, have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on convoys fleeing Gaza City. No immediate response was available from Israel. Al Jazeera correspondents have reported that thousands of Palestinian civilians have fled northern Gaza after a warning from Israel. Israeli shelling hit a group of reporters in southern Lebanon, killing one Reuters journalist and injuring several others, including two from Al Jazeera. At least 1,900 Palestinians were killed and 6,388 wounded in Israeli air attacks on Gaza. In the occupied West Bank, Israelis killed 16 Palestinians on Friday, taking the Palestinian death toll in the region to 51 since the war began. The number of people killed in Israel has reached 1,300, with more than 3,000 wounded. Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of using white phosphorus in Gaza and Lebanon, putting civilians at serious risk. Mr. President, put an end to this. United States President Joe Biden's unconditional support for Israel's war on Gaza was denounced by Arab, Muslim and Palestinian rights advocates in the U.S. who called attention to the dehumanization of Palestinian people by media outlets and politicians. Speaking at a news conference on Friday, the representatives of several advocacy groups in the U.S. also sounded the alarm about the prospect of hate incidents against Arab and Muslim Americans. South Korea evacuates 163 of its citizens from Israel. The South Korean Foreign Ministry has announced that a military aircraft has evacuated 163 of its citizens from Israel amid an escalating conflict. The ministry said a KC-330 military transport plane carrying the South Koreans departed Tel Aviv early on Saturday and is expected to land at Seoul Air Base later today. It added that 51 Japanese and 6 Singaporean nationals also joined in the flight. 15 medical staff killed by Israel in Gaza, Palestinian Ministry of Health. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says that 15 medical staff have now been killed in the Israeli bombing of Gaza, with 27 others injured. 23 ambulances and medical vehicles have also been hit, as well as 15 medical facilities. The health situation in Gaza is increasingly dire, with hospitals struggling to deal with the number of people who need treatment, worried that they will be unable to get enough fuel to keep the power running, and facing the threat of forced evacuation by the Israeli army. Brazil circulating new draft resolution at UN. Gabriel Elizondo at the United Nations in New York reports that a new Security Council draft resolution has been circulated, this time by Brazil. Unlike the previous Russian draft, this one strongly condemns Hamas and its attack last Saturday, while urging Israel to rescind its order for Palestinian civilians to evacuate from northern Gaza. We'll have more on this new draft resolution as soon as we get it. Trapped with nowhere to go, Scottish leader's family stuck in Gaza. Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf said that his mother-in-law, Elizabeth El Nakla, is among those trapped in the Palestinian territory of Gaza with nowhere to go. She has been told to leave Gaza but, like the rest of the population, is trapped with nowhere to go, Yousaf wrote post on X, formerly known as Twitter. Israel had ordered an estimated 1 million residents in northern Gaza to immediately evacuate amid a possible ground operation. In a short video clip accompanying the post, El Nakla asked, "Where's humanity? Where are the people's hearts in the world to let this happen in this day and age?" Al Jazeera Network condemns deadly Israeli attack on reporters in Lebanon. Al Jazeera Media Network has condemned the Israeli missile attack on journalists working in southern Lebanon, which killed a Reuters cameraman and wounded several other journalists, including 2 Al Jazeera staff, on Friday. In an attempt to silence the media, Israeli forces fired a missile at an Al Jazeera team working in Lebanon's Alma al-Shab area, killing Reuters cameraman Issam Abdullah and wounding Al Jazeera correspondent Carmen Jukater and photographer Eli Brakia, the network said in a statement. Israel's targeting of the Al Jazeera team is a blatant disregard of international safety standards that clearly distinguish the press, as they shelled and burned an Al Jazeera broadcast vehicle despite our crew's presence alongside other international media in an agreed-upon location, the network said. Al Jazeera holds Israel legally and morally responsible for this brutal attack and calls on the international community to take action to ensure the safety of journalists, the network said. The network also condemned the repeated atrocities by Israeli forces against its staff, including the killing of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was shot dead by Israeli troops in 2022 while she reported on a raid on the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. The perpetrators of crimes against Al Jazeera staff must be held accountable and brought to justice, the network said, adding that such threats and attacks will not deter our work or journalists as they will continue to convey the truth despite the many attempts to silence them. The network also conveyed its sincere and heartfelt condolences to Issam Abdullah's family and wished the injured a speedy recovery. UN Humanitarian Relief Chief slams Israel's evacuation order. UN's Under-Secretary-General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths has echoed the calls of his colleagues in condemning Israel's demand for people to evacuate northern Gaza, saying there were no safe places to go. The order to evacuate 1.1 million people from northern Gaza defies the rules of war and basic humanity, Griffiths said on X, formerly known as Twitter. Forcing scared and traumatized civilians, including women and children, to move from one densely populated area to another, without even a pause in the fighting and humanitarian support is dangerous and outrageous, he warned. Gaza coast reportedly hit by Israeli strikes from the sea. We are getting reports in the last hour that a portion of the Gaza coast has been hit by Israeli strikes from the sea. Al Jazeera Arabic is reporting that Israeli boats struck targets along the coast in a pre-dawn attack. Meanwhile, an air raid also hit a building in the central Gaza city of Deir el-Balah. The draft resolution that was circulated by Russia during a 2.5-hour closed-door UN Security Council meeting is really the first draft by any of the Security Council members since this conflict began. The Russians clearly are hitting on some of the key points, particularly trying to secure that safe passageway for people that are in Gaza to get out to a safer area, and also calling for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian aid. The Russians clearly feel that this is their opportunity to try to push diplomacy forward through the Security Council. The meeting was closed doors. Journalists were not allowed inside. However, we were told from sources that were inside that Secretary-General Antonio Guterres briefed the Security Council on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. He also stressed his worry about this conflict spilling over to the West Bank or southern Lebanon. After outcry over Ukraine, big business muted on Israel-Hamas war. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year, the corporate world's response was loud and clear. Corporate giants from Adidas and Disney, to Bank of America and Toyota, pledged financial and moral support for Ukraine and Ukrainians. CEOs including Apple's Tim Cook and Citigroup's Jane Fraser sported Ukrainian flag lapels in solidarity. The response of big business to the Israel-Hamas conflict has been muted in comparison, and many household name brands that adopted a vocal stance on the Ukraine war have declined to weigh in on the Middle East conflict. 70 dead while fleeing northern Gaza amid Israeli deadline. As we reported earlier, dozens of Palestinians have been killed in Israeli air raids while they were fleeing the northern Gaza Strip, according to Hamas officials, after the Israeli military ordered more than 1 million residents to evacuate. The media office of Hamas, the Palestinian group that governs the besieged Gaza Strip, said mostly women and children were among the 70 people killed in air attacks on cars leaving Gaza City. The demand by Israel was rejected by the United Nations, which called it impossible. Welcome to our live coverage. Hello and welcome to our live coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Our team will be bringing you all of the updates as the conflict continues to rage and thousands flee. Israel is continuing its bombardment of Gaza as it appears to prepare for a ground invasion of the Palestinian territory. Recap of the main developments. It's almost 2300 hours Greenwich Mean Time, 2 a.m. in Palestine. Here are the main developments as fighting continues between Hamas and Israel. Hamas officials say dozens of Palestinians have lost their lives in Israeli airstrikes as they attempted to escape the northern Gaza Strip. This occurred after the Israeli military issued an evacuation order to more than 1 million residents. The World Health Organization, WHO, has warned the evacuation order for Gaza amounts to a death sentence for vulnerable hospital patients. Shelling by the Israeli army struck a group of reporters in southern Lebanon, killing one Reuters journalist and wounding several others, including 2 from Al Jazeera. At least 1,900 Palestinians were killed and 7,696 wounded in Israeli air attacks on Gaza. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.